Hello, my name is Marvin. Today is, let's see here, April 13th, 2004. I am making this tape. I thought I should make it a year ago. Made part of it. Didn't like it. Really didn't think it'd make any difference if I did make it, but a good friend of mine said I should make it. He said I should sit down in front of a videotape machine and do it, but you're just going to have to take my word that this is Marv Heemeyer, serial number 503-689-4771. And I'm living in Grand Lake, Colorado. And this tape is about my life since I come up here to Grand Lake in 1991. I moved up here in the fall of 1991 to kind of take a 6-month vacation. Had a guy and his wife who were leasing my muffler shop in Boulder at 4790 Pearl Street. The guy's name was Doug Brandstetter with his wife. I forget her name right now, but anyway, they were just on a probationary period. This guy had serious alcohol and drug abuse problems in the past. Supposedly was cleaned up. I didn't know if he was or not, but he kept pestering me for jobs. Finally, I said he could lease the place. Anyway, he ran it for 4.5 years, and everything went to hell. I guess he got a divorce, and different things happened. I ended up getting it back, and then I let another guy come along. I was working down there, working up in Granby, actually, at the muffler shop I had in Granby, and in Boulder. Had 2 different people working for me. One in Boulder, her name was Christy. She was from someplace up in South Dakota. Great worker, wonderful person. I really appreciated her. And then a little girl up here, Gretchen Allison was her name. And anyway, so I was running both businesses, and this other guy came along named Doug Davis. He worked at Midas for about 9 years as a manager, and he wanted to be a working manager, and so he took over the place, and I gave him a little better deal than the other Doug Brandstetter had, because the first Doug seemed to have a lot of problems making his payments the last year or so, but we had, I believe they were for one reason, and he would never admit it though. That's the same way that this Doug Davis, he finally left. He left here about a month ago. I got the place back. The landlord evicted him. Old Harold Pelly down there evicted him. And anyway, I took it back, and hopefully I got it sold to a real nice guy and his wife, Jeff Sterling, and his wife Jennifer. They should be taking over the 1st of May. 1st of May. Anyway, so I've cashed out of it finally, and I'm done with it. And anyway, I moved up here. That's my history in Boulder. This is my history up here. I came up here, and after a few months of living here, I realized this guy down there in Boulder was doing better than I ever thought he would. So it was all based on, he kept it based on whether he performed or not. Of course, he was making all kinds of money, so I was happy, he was happy, and I realized he was going to keep it. So it came springtime, it's probably April, I'm thinking. I decided that, I probably ought to buy some property up here to have something to do, so I looked at this 3 lots and the 2 little cabins that I'm living in here right now, and had a beautiful view, and the price was really cheap, so I bought them. And figured I'd spend the next year until this Doug guy, folded, because I didn't know how long it would last. I figured I'd just fix this house up, these cabins up. Well, then a friend of mine from Boulder, a friend, he was a friend to a point, I guess you'd call him a friend. We did a lot of snowmobiling together. He met me through the muffler shop down there. He had a DJ's Auto Care down there, or Dr. John's Auto Care, and I did a lot of exhaust work for him, and he was a snowmobiler. So we started snowmobiling together. Without a doubt, I knew he had some problems with dope, as far as marijuana and drugs were concerned. I just didn't know how bad it was. And, you got to just kind of ignore that stuff in today's day and age. You go out there and you find somebody who's a good rider, you ride with them, and we had a lot of fun together. Anyway, he called me and said he was looking for place up here to start a garage. And he already owned a cabin up here, up there off County Road 4. And I said I'd take a look, see if I could find anything. So I started looking, and there was a guy named Pepper had a little garage down there south of Grand Lake, just north of the Ski-Doo dealership that had a bay door on it, and he didn't want anything big, so I told him about that, and then I happened to cross a piece of property down there in Granby. It was an old concrete plant, and the guy had gone bankrupt and had an auction and, you know, gotten rid of all his stuff he had and left about a bunch of junk there. It's my understanding. And but it had a 3,000 square foot building with 3 bay doors that were huge. I mean, it was a great building. It wasn't the best location, but it was a good building, and had 2 acres of ground. And I talked to him about it, and he said that'd be great. I think he even came up and looked at it. I can't remember. But anyway, he said that he was interested. So we talked to a realtor named Jeff Crane, or I talked to him, I should say. And this was about a month before they were going to have this FDIC auction. So Jeff says that he'd sell me the property. We could write up a contract on it if I wanted it, but he figured it was worth about $110,000 or so, or more, you know. And I kind of laughed, and I said, you know, there's no way it's worth that. I mean, property up here was just so depressed in 1991 and 92. It was terrible. And I didn't foresee any kind of future up here. I mean, I hadn't ever lived in the mountains before. It just didn't seem like the good thing to be buying, you know, at that kind of a price. So I told him, I said I'd wait until the FDIC had their auction. And I and John talked it over, and we agreed that, you know, I'd pay $66,000 for it at the max. And if it went higher than that, we wouldn't buy it. He didn't want it. So the time came, and then he'd pay me a certain amount. I can't remember if he was going to pay me more than $66,000 for buying it for him, or if I was just going to finance it to him. I know I was going to finance it to him, but I don't know if it was $66,000 or if there was going to be more. Anyway, it doesn't make any difference. Come time for the auction, Jeff Crane was down there with 4 older guys who were looking to invest some money in some FDIC properties, and I think there was about 160 properties for sale that day. And anyway, this one finally came up for bid, and first they told me that there was a EPA audit against the place, which was they were recommending a $20,000 cleanup. They had all these surveys done by Chen Northern, was the company contracted to look at it. But anyway, come to find out later on that FDIC had done a lot of the cleanup that they had recommended, and I don't know, for some reason I didn't realize that. So I told John about it, or it came up for sale, came up on the block, and they had a bid for $35,000 from some guy up in front. And so we were going to pay $66,000. I was waving at them. They couldn't see me. So finally they caught my bid. So I had a bid for $40,000, and this other guy, I couldn't believe it. I didn't know who he was. He jumped up on his chair. That's how I knew where he was. And I was looking back, and of course he bid $45,000, and of course I bid $50,000, and was waiting for him to bid, and he wouldn't bid. So I got the property for $50,000. And this guy, come to find out, his name was Cody Dochev. He came back there and introduced himself to me about the rudest, most arrogant person. I mean, this guy's just a fucking asshole. Come back and just introduced himself kind of by just giving me a tongue lashing for about 10 minutes about, you know, who I thought I was and what I was going to do with the property. And I explained to him I was buying it for John Kleiner, and he said he wanted the property. And I said, well, I'll tell you, I'll sell you the property. I says, we were going to pay $66,000. And, you know, I told him I was selling it to John Kleiner, who was going to start an automotive store there. And he didn't want to have anything to do with it. He said, bullshit. He says, I only got, Gus Harris was his buddy there sitting beside him, I guess. And Gus was sponsoring the whole financing on this thing. And Gus wasn't going to pay more than 50 grand for it. And I says, well, I'm sorry, but I says, I can't just not come down here and spend my money and waste my time and not, make some money on it. So I offered it to him that day for what I was going to sell it to John for, because I could tell the guy was pissed off, and I wasn't there to piss off any people. I mean, this is the only guy of all the properties that sold before his that was doing any screaming at anybody during the auction. I mean, 160 properties were sold that day, and this is the only fool that didn't come down there with enough money to buy his property. I mean, this shows you how day late and a dollar short this fool is. He thinks he's going to go down there. I mean, he screwed the whole town of Granby over the years by going bankrupt. And, I guess this guy's pretty dramatic. He faked a suicide jumping off a windmill or some tall building out there by his place by Hot Sulphur Springs. Anyway, he's going off on me and wasn't going to pay any more money. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I got to have $66,000. I'll let John go find something else. I'm just trying to be a peacemaker here, but I got to make some money. He wouldn't have anything to do with it. So, I calmed him down. I mean, I talked to this guy forever, it seemed like. Everybody around me, they couldn't believe this asshole. And anyway, so we closed the deal. He left. He went away. And I went and had Jeff Crane sign the broker statement that I was purchasing this property. And as a matter of fact, going back here a little bit, when I had first looked at the property and Jeff had tried to sell it to me, I had asked him if the former owner was interested in purchasing the property at this FDIC auction. And he said he didn't know. Well, then I called the FDIC to look at it because there was a number to call, and they called an agent there in Granby, a real estate agent named Peter Colley. So Peter went out and bought a padlock, and I went down there with a cutting torch, and we cut the lock that was on the building off so I could look at it. And then, of course, he put his new padlock on. And he showed me the building, and it looked like it'd be a good building. So anyway, I asked this Peter Colley also if the former owner if he knew if the former owner had any interest in buying the building. And of course, he told me he didn't know. So, okay, well, I feel that my job is done. I'm going to go to the auction. So we did, and I ended up buying it. We closed on the deal, and, I came back up to Grand Lake and got a hold of John Kleiner and told him that what had happened. And this is, like I say, it was in about April of '92. And explained to him that there was an EPA audit against the property because there were some oil stains on the property, and there had been an oil fill barrel. And, I don't know if it was that day or a couple of weeks later, whenever, he just didn't want anything to do with the property all of a sudden. And, of course, I hadn't taken a deposit from him, so, I was stuck with the property. But he didn't want anything to do with it because of the audit, And, of course, he was from Boulder, and they'd been pretty, Boulder's pretty, what do you want to call it, eco-Nazi type. They think they're going to save the world. And, that was his fear, is one of the things was that then there were a lot of regulations about dumping oil and all that stuff. So he didn't want anything to do with it all of a sudden. Well, I don't know if he didn't have the money or just got cold feet or what, but I'm stuck with this property, so heck, I don't know what to do with it. So that summer, I'm pretty sure it was that summer, I tried cleaning the property up. Might have been even '92. I think I may have just let it sit there. I know I let it sit there for a while because I didn't have any equipment or anything to clean it up. But anyway, eventually I did buy a backhoe, and I bought a dump truck from my dad, beat truck, and started cleaning the property up and hauling the steel away. Hauled it over to Geisendorfer's property. He had a guy that was cutting up steel over there and selling steel, and this kid wanted it, so we just hauled everything over there. And basically got the place cleaned up pretty nice. Rented a bulldozer, a little D3 from Linky. What's his name? Dick Linky, south of Granby there. Pretty good, real good guy. And he delivered it over there, and I leveled out the ground and the stuff, tried to make it look pretty presentable, and I didn't know what to do with it. Shoot, the guy in Boulder was doing great, so finally I decided that I'd start a muffler shop, and I think I started that either late 92 or late 93. I don't remember anymore. But, I just started putting on mufflers. I went down to Denver and found a used vendor and brought a used hoist up that I had down there in Boulder and set it up and started putting on mufflers and advertising and everything. And, figured I was going to do a good thing. This was maybe an opportunity for me. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. In 92, I was cleaning the property up. Yeah, that's the way it went. Because in the summer of 92, after I bought it, guy named Bud Wilson, who is the superintendent of the Water and Sanitation District down there in Granby, came to me and said that they wanted me to hook on to be annexed into the Water and Sanitation District. So I said, great. I says, what do I have to do? I says, is there have to get an attorney involved or what? He said, no. He said he'd do all the paperwork, and there was some kind of fee, I think, that I had to pay, but I don't remember anymore. But anyway, I was supposed to go to a meeting in September, I believe it was, and get annexed into the Water and Sand. And so we did. I went to the meeting, and I just expected it to go through. And it was unbelievable what happened to that meeting. The main topic of concern that they had with me being annexed into the district was that they didn't have a maintenance easement across the property that was just south of me. It was owned by Gus Harris, and they had put in a water and sewer line years before, but it supposedly hadn't gotten this maintenance easement. And Gus Harris wasn't going to give it to him or something. I'm not really sure how that all worked, but this maintenance easement was a pretty big obstacle. And they basically told me, the board did, in the fall of 92, that I would never have water and sewer there until I got this maintenance easement from this Gus Harris guy. Well, I was a little upset because, Bud was a superintendent, and this was I thought this was a done deal. So, I left the meeting, and I didn't need to listen to any more of their crap. They wasted a lot of my time. And, I knew that there was some animosity in the community. I had been getting my hair cut down at this place called Lana's, and she had told me about how this Cody Dochev guy had tried to kill himself and had screwed a lot of people in the community, and had gone bankrupt, and he was they were kind of glad that he wasn't there anymore, that he was outside of town. He had moved up into Dick Thompson's gravel pit north of where that location was, about a mile, and was doing making concrete out of there again. But anyway, what the heck was my point? This Lana she told me how upset everybody in the community was that at the FDIC, because what had happened was they had that big savings and loan failure scandal back in the late 70s, early 80s. And everybody blamed the FDIC for this plant's failure and other people's problems that they'd had up there, because what had happened is these people, with the savings and loans failed, these people that owned property and stuff up there didn't have any place to make payments. So what they did, they didn't know what to do, so instead of putting the money aside every month, supposedly they went out and spent the money. Well, then after a couple of years or whatever it took to straighten those deals, that savings and loan thing out, FDIC wanted their money all at once from these people that hadn't made these payments to these collapsed savings and loans places. And these people didn't have the money. And so the FDIC, of course, was foreclosing on these properties. So everybody up there hated the FDIC. Didn't like their practices. And of course, here I am. I'm a beneficiary of the FDIC's actions, and so and I found this out later, people are pretty angry with me, They didn't know how to play by the rules. I played within the parameters of what was supposed to be done. There were 160 properties sold that day, and I bought it just like everybody else bought their property. And, there's no reason why didn't this guy have enough money to buy this property? I mean, it was an auction. He should have known that there was going to be people bidding against him, but I honestly believe he thought he was going to get it for next to nothing. And I believe that because I think the word was out in the community that he wanted it. And personally, I think the two realtors that showed it to me knew this, and they just didn't want the guy in the community, so they told me that they didn't know that he was bidding on it or that he wanted it. Because had I known that, I would have talked to him. I would have called him and found out what the deal was. But anyway, I'm a little disappointed. And one thing they told me was to stay in touch with the superintendent in case anything changed. Well, it says, of course I'll do that, but that was kind of a mistake on my part, because it shouldn't have been my responsibility to keep track of the superintendent, which I did. Because, I took this Bud Wilson out for breakfast on more than one occasion. He spent a lot of time out there at my shop. I sold him a Woos, W-U-S, four-wheel drive, little dump garden tractor. And, I got along, and this guy was a pretty good guy. At least that's the way he came across to me. So we had a pretty good relationship, and he never ever mentioned anything to me that anything was changing. He says it would, but it never did. Well, anyway, so I just go on about my business, and finally, I think it was in '94, nothing was happening. Bud wasn't telling me anything was changing or anything, so I went ahead and I said, well, I'm going to build me a boat storage building, and I'll design it so that I've got 3 2,000 square foot units, and it was 50 feet wide by 120 feet long, and that we had 3 bay doors, and I was to put in 3 personnel doors, and I set the foundation up to have these 3 bay doors and 3 personnel doors, so that I could put inner walls in or divider walls in later on when I finally got on the water and sewer. So I could have it for rental, and this would become my, a good retirement income. I could rent the muffler shop building or sell the muffler shop business. I could subdivide the property because it was in the city already and fell under their subdivision rules. It was pretty much just a pre-approved thing. You just had to apply to the town and pay them the fees and, follow the rules for what was HGB zoning. And HGB zoning, of course, was the best zoning you could possibly get. It included everything that was in commercial, plus other things that wasn't. And there was no other zoning that would include more businesses than HGB. So anyway, I thought this was a good plan, and I had this building built, and in the fall of '94, just started advertising for boat storage. And, of course, filled it up the very first year. And was pretty happy with that. So, basically, it was paying the cost of the building. Well, we just go along. I'm making lemons out of lemonade, or lemonade out of lemons, I can't get this darn water and sewer going, So, I had a well and a septic system, which was doing its job. And I figured that, that'll work, Well, of course, and knowing that I couldn't put the other building on a well and sewer because I was in town, or well and septic because I was in town, I was going to have to hook onto the water and sewer, but not being able to do that because I didn't have this maintenance easement. And Bud never told the thing to me yet. I'm building this building, telling him what I'm going to do. He knew what was going on, but he never told me that anything had ever changed. So I continue and do the boat storage, and I'm doing muffler works and so forth. By '98, I was doing, I was making a real good income out of there, along with what was coming out of Boulder. Actually, I'd gotten it back in '97, of course, as I said. and then I gave it to this other Doug Davis guy. But I was, I had income out of Boulder, and I had income out of Granby here, and life was pretty good. And I was taking a lot of time off because you don't have to maintain rentals with boat storage. There wasn't that much muffler business up here. I mean, I was only working 3 days a week in the wintertime there, 5 days a week in the summer, which was typical of any store I ever worked in. As far as the summer was concerned, I never had any store ever open more than 5 days a week unless I'd just open one up. Then I might work a Saturday to make sure that all the revenue was coming in. Anyway, I just was going along happy, and in '98, I believe it was, in the fall, this Dochev guy, going way back to '92, without a doubt, I made a mistake. Gus Harris, a couple of months after I bought this property, this guy named Gus Harris, who owned the property south of me, was over there doing some cutting on some steel, and I went over to, meet him and see once if he was cooled down, because I know that he was upset that they didn't get this property, and he was. I mean, actually, I'd had a couple of conversations before that time, and he was willing to sell me the property then for $17,500, and I basically told him, this was 2 months after I bought it, that I didn't buy that property for myself that was there. I bought it for somebody else, and he was not wanting to buy it, though John did want to buy it. So I didn't want to spread myself too thin because the economy was so bad up here. I told him, I said, I'll think about it, and I'd get back to him. Well, the truth of the matter is about a year later, less than a year later, I went to him and I said, I'd like to buy that property. And I said, is that $17,000 offer still good? And he says, no. He says, I'd have to have $20,000 for it. And I talked to his wife about this too, about getting these contracts signed so I could buy it. And he never would get back to me as far as getting this deal done. So, I'm still not wanting to push this deal because this is a small community, and, I need to fit in, and I'm not, pressured. This is not one of those things I felt that you needed to do in a community where I'm new in. Anyway, getting back to '98 now, earlier in '96 or '97, Gus Harris had sold this 2 acres to this guy, Cody Dochev. And of course, Cody had made a comment that, he wanted my property back in '97 it was. And I had gone out and had a guy make an appraisal. Wilson was his name. It was Doudna, who was a local appraiser here at Grand Lake still. And it was Doudna and Wilson and Doudna commercial appraisers. And this guy named Wilson had made up an appraisal on my property in 1997 and came up with a value of $270,000. And I had offered this property to Cody for $250,000. I says, Cody, I'll walk away from my business. I'll get everything out of here. You buy this place, and for $250,000, which was less than the appraisal, and you're happy, I'm happy. And Cody never would. I gave him a copy of the appraisal. Never would come back to me with a counteroffer. So I just kept on about my business. And in '98, this Dochev guy, he comes onto the property just south of me and puts up this big circus tent. And he starts bringing concrete down to build these sewer septic tanks and manholes, rings and different things that he's making. And, of course, I don't remember. He was driving right across my property because he had an easement, which was fine at the time. I didn't think it was going to be any big problem. But, he still hadn't made an offer on my property. Well, '99, I think it was, rolled around, and come to find out, he's going to try to buy the property next door to the west of me and has a contract on it to purchase it. It's 21 acres. Well, I find this out too late. First what happened was, how the heck, I'm not sure how this happened. If he actually had a contract to get this, yeah, he had a contract on it. But somehow, he ended up, he had to have bought it by this time. Anyway, I tried to buy the property out from under him because I didn't want no friggin' concrete plant next to me, especially upwind of me. I mean, I was going to be right in the dust tail of this whole operation, and that wasn't going to work. Well, that didn't happen. The guy didn't want it, and I started getting notices that they were going to rezone this property. And what happened? He started building. And he ended up putting in what he called a water storage tank and a well. And it's my understanding from a guy here in town named Kevin Fisher, that because Kevin was working for the guy who did the well and did the foundation of the building, that this Cody Gocheff guy got fined for putting this well in, and I don't know, he was in trouble already. And it was kind of interesting. But I didn't know what was going on yet. But I started getting these. I didn't start getting notices. I got a notice that they were going to rezone this property next to me, and I went down to the city to see about whether or not, wanted to see this guy's building permit for what he was doing over there. And they had a building permit issued to him for $5,000 cost to build this water storage tank, which was allowed in HPD zoning, supposedly. Well, it had a cover letter on it that said that it had nothing to do with the PDO that this Cody guy was proposing to rezone this property, which to me was a big red flag. I mean, you say it's not nothing to do with something or anything, you know that it has something to do with anything. And anyway, I just could not believe this was going on. So we were going to have the second or third meeting, I can't remember anymore. But I went down, this guy here in town, his name was Mike. Hollywood graduate. I had a master's degree in city planning, and they happened to overhear me one day, and they were talking. He said that what they were doing was illegal, and that I should go get an attorney, and he recommended this guy named Dietza out of Boulder. So I called this Dietza guy up for an appointment to go down and see him about whether or not I had a case against these people to stop the concrete plant. So I went down there and met with this Dietza. Can't even remember his name right now. This guy is a cowardly thief, man. He is a man of the system, and he milked me like I've never been milked before. I'll tell you, he is slick. But anyway, getting back to this meeting, I was going over these different things that were in the zoning ordinance that they weren't meeting. You know, the different requirements, and he kept telling me I didn't have a case. You know, every time I asked him a question. Finally, I told him, I said something to the effect that, well, you know, they were building this concrete plant already, and I didn't know what to do. And he said, what do you mean they're building? He says, they can't build anything until, on this PDO property, until they've got final approval. He says, you saved the best to last. He says, if that's true, if they've already issued the building permit, and I showed it to him. And I says, but they got this cover letter on that says it has nothing to do with the PDO. He says, this is all bullshit by the town. He says, they cannot do anything on that property. So I says, okay. I says, this gives me a lawsuit. Can we get him stopped? He says, yeah. He says, and he gave me the example of how some liquor store had built some people had built this building and put a liquor store in it, and it was never approved. And they ended up losing, and that was what would happen here. The building, of course, wasn't taken down. They just put some other kind of business in it. But the liquor store had to go away because it wasn't zoned for that kind of a business. So he says, that's exactly what they're doing here. He says, we can stop this, no problem. So he told me to go up and take a bunch of pictures of what was going on, about what they built, and I did this, and Mike Carmody was his name. The guy here in Grand Lake that had introduced or referenced this pizza guy to me. Mike Carmody, I take all these pictures of his property, and I show them to Mike, and Mike comes down there and looks at it, and he goes up to their concrete plant with me and sees all the dust that they're making and everything, and sees my plight, and agrees, this is wrong. So I'm paying this Mike Carmody guy money for consulting or whatever. And I told him that this pizza guy was coming up to the next meeting to look, and he was going to be up here early, and I said, come to dinner with us before the meeting, and we'll go look at this. So Deepa came up, and we drove around, and we looked at this property out there that they were built on just west of me. And then we went down to the restaurant, and Mike Carmody, I can't remember if he was with me or if he met me there afterwards, and I introduced him to Deepa. He must have met me there. So, we had this conversation about how Deepa could stop this because they were building there, and they didn't have final approval there. They bannered, we talked back and forth about what was going on. Finally, the meeting was there, and Deepa went into the meeting with me. Listened to what they had to say, and I don't know what was all said, but anyway, after the meeting, Deepa told me, he says, they're not doing this right. He says, send me copies of all the minutes that have gone on, and we'll look into this a little further. So I did that. I got copies of the previous meetings and sent them down to Deepa. I cannot remember his first name, but I'll think of it later. So I sent these minutes down to Deepa, and I had left a zoning ordinance with Deepa the first time I was down there. And Deepa had been studying that ordinance to see once what it said. And he gets the copy of these minutes. He calls me one day, about a week or so before the town is supposed to have this final meeting for approval of this concrete plant. He says, Marv, he says, there's something wrong here. He says, well, I've looked through these minutes. He says, are these the only meetings that they've had? And that was the truth. I said, that's all the meetings they've had. He says, well, if this is all the meetings they've had, they have a serious procedural error here. At least that's what he called it later on. He says they've left out at least 2 public hearings. And basically they're trying to short-circuit this whole process to get this approved. And I says, well, great. I says, that just adds to our case, right? And he says, no. He says, this is the case. He says, we don't even have to worry about the upzoning as far as them building there. He says, we can stop it based on this. So I says, well, great. I says, how do we go about this? He says, we go and we tell them. And I says, if it'll get it stopped, if it'll be a done deal, I says, let's get it done. Let's stop it. So he wrote up this letter to the town, how they were doing it wrong, and brought it up with him at the meeting, the final meeting, and explained to him how they were doing this wrong. And of course, Docheff's attorney is all defensive, and the town attorney is all defensive that they're doing it right. And Dietza continues to explain to him how they've left out these public hearings. And then they take a break. Okay, and of course all along I had contended with the town that this was pre-approved. And they said it wasn't, of course, and I says, well, why did you issue the building permit? And they said that they could because that was allowable in HCD zoning. But and this is interesting, later on, an article came out in our local paper. There were a lot of articles about this. Of course, it was September 7th of 2000 in the Sky High News. There was an article about how Granby tickets Mountain View muffler over junk. And they've got a little caption on the picture of my building. It says, ticketed. Mountain View muffler was ticketed by the town of Granby for a junk violation. In the foreground is the foundation for a proposed concrete batch plant proposed for a site near Mountain View Muffler. Well, it didn't occur to me at the time when this article came out, but how can you have a foundation for a proposed concrete plant? Everybody knew that this concrete plant was going in, even though they hadn't had final approval yet. And this was a joke. I mean, the whole community knew that this was going to happen, and I knew it was going to happen. But I was basically listening to this Dietza that this was going to get stopped. Well, he told them this, and they had a big recess in this meeting, and went outside, and they're all screaming at each other, and they go back in after 15 minutes and sit down, and lo and behold, it doesn't stop anything. The town makes this resolution 2000 that this is not a final meeting, even though it's been advertised in the local paper as in the public notices. The newspaper, Patrick Brower, the editor, has written an article that this is the final meeting and it should meet approval because it's such an important thing. It's needed by the community. Well, it was needed, but it should have stayed where it was up there in the concrete plant, up in the gravel pit. Besides, this Dochev guy owned 5 acres right there by the gravel pit. He could have put it there. He didn't need to rezone anything. He could have put it right there. But this guy had this hard-on for me that for 10 years that he was going to get even with me. And he said this in so many words on more than one occasion. And anyway, well, he was doing it. That's whatever, I'm fighting for my life here because this is my future. This is my retirement. I need to get this stopped. Anyway, they made this resolution 2000 that they are at a preliminary meeting, and they're making certain that everybody knows it now, and that they can do this. Well, Dietza tells me, of course, it's illegal. They can't do it. They had the final meeting advertised. They're at the final meeting, and now they're changing it and saying it's a preliminary meeting. And he convinces me that we've still got a good case. He says they can go on and do whatever they want. We're going to get this stopped. So I, of course, believe him, and I just keep paying him. And up until that time, I paid him probably about $5,000. Anyway, we got this lawsuit going on, and this newspaper guy, Patrick Brower, this guy is the scum of the earth also, which is some of these people up here are for different reasons. But this guy hated me because when I first came up here in 91, the gambling issue was getting started up here. And I'm just sitting around my condo reading this newspaper, and this guy is just blasting. I mean, he's just belittling them and slandering them as far as I was concerned, just making the pro gamblers look like fools. And I thought, well, what's wrong with these people? They got no economy up here. Here's something that's happened down there in Blackhawk and over at Cripple Creek, and it's done good economic things for those communities. Why is he so against this? I never could understand it. So I finally, after he blasted some people that I knew here in town, I wrote him a letter and told him, hey, this is America. Leave these people alone. This needs. You don't have to be making them look like some kind of fools. Was the whole gist of my letter. Anyway, he just didn't know who Marvin was, but he definitely hated me because I, said some things in the paper that were right on the button. I mean, I had an attorney for a neighbor at the time. His name was Sommermeyer, Butch Sommermeyer. Told him his first name was Mayo. He's out of Fort Collins, I believe. But they had the house down below me here, and he said, Marv, he says, what you're saying in the newspaper is exactly right. He says, I'm all behind you. And it was encouraging, Well, this is small-town politics, and what do I know about small-town politics other than they're usually not good? And I just figured, well, I'm kind of immune to a lot of this, and this was back in 92 yet, and didn't realize how much it was going to affect what I was doing. This newspaper guy, Patrick Brower, had told me after I started the muffler shops on a couple of different occasions, because I called him, and I was advertising with him and so forth. He said that he was going to come down and we'd do an article on my little business. Well, he never did do it. You know, he was doing everything he could to keep me from getting any additional publicity. It's one of those, it's a kind of a community that in order for you to get ahead, you have to keep the neighbor down. You've got to keep, you got to be bad-mouthing everybody. It's not, you know, build yourself up on your own merits. It's tear the other guy down however you can do it, legally, of course. I'm going to take a break here. I guess I'm not going to take a break. Lose my train of thought. Anyway, this Patrick Brower, I mean, he's a pothead. Of course, you can't tell anybody that. You know, big liberal, army brat, has had everything in his life given to him. You know, but he knows how to abuse the power of the pen. And that's a big thing up here, is abuse of power. They said that to me one time, that I didn't have any respect for authority. And that's not the truth at all. The truth is I have the utmost respect for authority. But they don't. They didn't respect the FDIC or its procedures. They don't respect good people coming in the community. They only respect what they want. And if they're in that power circle, that's the way it's going to be. They believe. And you're not going to get in if you've done anything to offend them in any way. Well, I guess that's their right in America. But I've got my rights too. Maybe they're wrong when I exercise these rights, but I really don't care. I am going to exercise this right because we are given this freedom to do what we want to do until we do something wrong. And then we have to pay for it. Well, these people have figured out a pretty good way, being a small community, how to get away with doing things wrong and doing it legally. And I'll get into that a little bit more later on. But getting back to the newspaper article, I mean, how can you have a friggin' a foundation for a proposed concrete plant? You know, this was a pre-approved deal, and I just didn't. I've never been through any town politics before, but because this was affecting me so adversely, I was definitely learning, and you know, but it was always a day late and a dollar short with me, and my attorney wasn't helping me at all. It was kind of sad. And the town paper was actually, this Brower guy was pissed off as hell when he found out that we caught the town with their pants down. You know, he wrote in the paper that I'd gotten some hotshot attorney out of Boulder to stop this whole thing. And he was no hotshot attorney. He was doing his job, which, getting back to that personally, I believe with all my heart that both the town attorney and Daly, Rich Daly was Docheff's attorney, and the town attorney, I forget his name right now, for Granby, is the same one for Grand Lake. They were in cahoots on this deal, where they figured that no one would know the procedure because they had never done a PDO before, a commercial PDO, and they figured that what did they have to lose? They would just go ahead and try to get this through, and it would probably go through, no problems. But, of course, this hotshot attorney, according to the paper, caught them with their pants down. Well, do you think that they would ever thank me for putting them on the straight and narrow, on the right path to get this done right? No, you know, and I agree. I screwed up. That's what I'm agreeing to, screwing up. We should have never told them what we did. And as a matter of fact, the night of that final meeting, when they made that resolution, or the night that he pointed out to them that they were doing this wrong, at 2:30 in the morning, I sent this Dietz attorney of mine at 2:30 in the morning an email, because I came home after the meeting and read the ordinance again, and I says, I think that we've spoken too soon, and that we shouldn't have told him, that we should have let him have the final meeting, and that we actually should have had a lawsuit filed 30 days later. Had we done it that way, we would have been able to get an injunction against the building that was continuing. We probably could have gotten some of my attorney's fees or all of my attorney's fees, and actually, you know, made these people out, this town attorney and this Rich Daly and the Docheffs and the town council and the planning commission, to show the town the real mafia type tactics that they were using. And that's all they are. They're criminals. You know, they bend the law, and they got caught, and that pissed them off, and, so now they really hate me. Well, I'm sorry, it's my future. It's my life. I am an independent business person, and only I am responsible for my future and my income and my livelihood. And they're threatening that, and they're pissed off because I'm trying to defend my property and my livelihood against this. And that doesn't make any sense, Well, anyway, I'm just getting a little upset here, so let me try to settle down. Get back to the point here. I'm not happy with the attorney, but what choice do I have? They've done this Resolution 2000. They go on with these meetings. He's telling me that they're still illegal. We're going to go to court. We're going to win. And, of course, it's all salesmanship. And I'm talking to this Mike Carmody guy who's supposed to be consulting with me. He says, Dietz is right. He says, they're doing this wrong. So I've got two people telling me that Dietz is wrong. I told Carmody I thought he screwed up, but Carmody said, no, but Dietz knows what he's doing. Well, Dietz didn't know what he was doing, or else the corruption up here is worse than I thought. And it is. I have no concept of how corrupt these people can be. But anyway, I'm looking, my business has gone to hell. Oh, and getting back to 99, when these first meetings were when we were going through all this approval, it was in 99 that I think we'd already started the lawsuit. And they're going to put in water and sewer to this 22 acres, or they're going to get it approved. And, I'm wanting my water and sewer hooked up. And I made this known in the minutes at the Planning Commission meeting and the Town Council meeting. And the guy who owned a motel over there, Boyce was his name, from the Boyce Insurance Agents. David Boyce, I believe his name is, had made a written request that they have water and sewer easements to their motels, to that section of land. They weren't in the town. It was county-owned property. It was county-zoned property, but they wanted the rights to get to the water and sewer. And I told this to Carmody, and Carmody says, well, yeah, he says, they have to give that to you too, and that's why I asked for it. They could not discriminate against me as a neighbor. If I wanted water and sewer, they had to give that to me too. So I believe that's what was happening. Although I never sent them a formal letter requesting it, it was just mentioned at the meetings. All right, and I had gone down to the Water and Sanitation District in 99 to review the minutes back from 92 to see once what we had all discussed and why I wasn't allowed on and it hadn't been annexed in at that time. I go down to the Water and Sanitation District and get these minutes, and I start reading them, and I really can't believe these minutes because there is not one mention of a maintenance easement being required for them in order to allow me into the Sanitation District. There's not one mention of it, and that was probably 15 minutes of the discussion at the water meeting that night back in the fall of 92 was that I didn't have this maintenance easement. And I was just amazed that they had changed the minutes to reflect that we hadn't talked about that. Well, I come to find out later that the reason they eliminated that from being in the minutes was because if it ever... So basically, had they not meddled in my business, this whole thing would have turned out completely different. If they would have just left me alone, let me get on the water and sand, build the building, put the tenants in there. I could have had that rented out. I could have rented out the muffler shop. I could have sold the muffler shop. I could have subdivided that. Could have done a lot of things. But basically, what all this is going to prove when it's all over with, if it's ever all over with, which I doubt, it's going to prove, I hope it's going to prove to people that meddling in your neighbor's business is destructive for the most part. it's going to come back to haunt you. Or it can, I should say. It can come back to haunt you. And it can come back to haunt you in spades. And the only person you have to blame is yourself. And that's one thing I found up here. You know, they've blamed the FDIC for so many of their problems. So many people up here are blamers. They are not responsible. They are not accountable. And that's the only way they can survive. And that's bad, because that is just continually transferred, generation after generation. The way the city operates, you know, it's just nothing ever gets better unless something drastic happens. And basically that's what's going to happen. So anyway, the other thing I was going to say was that I found out this even after, right around, I suppose, in 2000 sometime. This was after I'd found out that the sanitation scam had been, when they hid from me my ability to get on, or kept it from me. I also found out about the year 2000 that in the fall of 1991, before I ever even came to Grand County, that this plan to put this concrete plant was already going into place. And I didn't know about this until 2000. But in 1991, in the fall, Gus Harris and Cody Dochev and the powers that be, the Thompsons motivation was to get rid of Cody because he was just a pig and such a little man complex. This guy was, he's Mr. Napoleon all the way, in the worst way. The guy just couldn't deal with the fact that he was little. And it definitely depraved the man. The guy is really psychological, needs some psychological help. But anyway, they had gone to the town and rezoned Gus Harris's 2 acres, which is directly south of my muffler shop. They did this under protest, which is in the minutes, from the owner of the Broken Arrow Motel, which was straight south of where the project was where the rezoning was. And I don't know if he didn't know it, or if they were counting on the public to be stupid, or if they were counting on the fact that nobody had any money that they'd be able to protest this in court. But the town went and spot zoned the 2 acres directly south of me, which was illegal in Colorado. They had changed the HGB zoning on that 2 acres to industrial. And because no one protested it within 30 days, it became law that they could do that. And therein lies a big problem. When I came along and, inadvertently bought this 2 acres, their plans were that Cody was going to buy this 2 acres, and he'd go to the town and convert it to industrial, because now it adjoined industrial property that they had approved already. So now it was no longer spot zoning, but approving it next to industrial zoning, and would be they were going to get away with it, and they were going to be able to put this concrete plant right there next to all those houses downwind of the town, so that the town would end up getting all this dust again. And they had the concrete on the north side of the County Road 612, and the neighbors, they just hated it up there. But now they were going to just do it all over again. And the main reason was Cody's motivation for doing it in 91 was because of water, I believe. His main reason in doing it in 2000, or 99, or whenever it was to get back at Marvin. It wasn't water anymore. He didn't get the message. And that message, again, I say, is, God was telling those people. I didn't know these people. Out of the blue, here I am buying this property with no malice towards anyone. Why didn't they get the message that they should not have put the concrete plant in town ever? Very subtle. This is just normal competition. You go to an auction and somebody outbids you. He would have been mad at anybody. Cody would have been mad at anybody who would have bought the property. Anybody. But you got to go there with enough money. Otherwise, you're the problem. It's your fault that this happened, not mine. You know, you can blame me all you want. You can blame the FDIC. That isn't the problem. You have got to learn to get over it and move on. But no, you sat there and plotted with the Thompsons to keep me down, to not allow me onto the water and sewer district, to not sell me that property, to sell it to Cody, to do this stuff, and to get even with me. You developed malice towards me. I never had any malice towards you. Like I said, I tried to sell Cody the property the day I bought it in the spring of '92. I tried to sell it to him in '97 for $250,000. In '99, I had another appraisal done. Tried to sell it to him then for the appraisal price of $395,000. Wilson did this again, this reappraisal. He still would not come to me with a counteroffer. How many times do you have to try to deal with a man? I mean, we had talked about this. These were 3 formal times, as far as I'm concerned. You know, there were many other times when he had, we had a chance to discuss it. Come on, Cody, buy the property. We didn't discuss any price or anything, but come on, Cody, be reasonable. But that's what you cannot do with people in the mountains, especially in Granby. They do not know what reason is. Reason to them is doing it their way. And that's the only thing. Once they get that in their mind, that's the only thing that's reasonable. Well, I've developed that philosophy to a point, maybe even to a higher point, because I am going to be unreasonable to the extent that although they've probably cost me $500,000 or more, I know it's been more. I could make it easily $300,000. That's based on my figures. My bookkeeper, who was Mark Krieg, felt that it cost me $500,000. My accountant, Dave Patner, in Granby, both these people are in Granby, felt that it cost me $1,000 for what the town had done to me, what the Thompsons had done to me, what the Dochests had done to me, and what the sanitation district had done to me. That is a lot of money. And that is more money than any man should bear to lose or to not make, or however you want to look at it. I want to say right now, if I would have been married, had a family, things may have gone different. But God built me for this job. He rewarded me for 45, 50 years with the lifestyle that I am so thankful for. And it's unfortunate, the poor people in Granby, so many of them were so jealous of my lifestyle that I could come and go as I pleased. Well, God blessed me in advance for the task that I am about to undertake. And I've tossed this, I have fought this for years now. Here it is, 2004, April of 2004. It was sometime in 2001, I believe. And I'm 6. 2000 or 2001. That the peace, I wept at times trying to understand why this was happening to me. And to do what I had to do to make these people listen, to learn, was just above me. And when I realized that one day, when I was sitting in the hot tub, and I was weeping, a peace came over me that has only come over me a few times before in my life, where I knew that what I was doing was tough, but it was the right thing, and that it was above me. It wasn't me. I was doing this because God wanted me to do it. And I didn't understand it. I said, why did you ask me to do this? Is that why I've never been married, so I didn't have a family? Is that why I've always been successful, so that I would realize my reward before doing this task? I don't know. There are other things I can ask. Had I not carried my cross earlier, and now God had prepared me to carry this cross? I believe so. And I'm carrying the cross willingly now. At first, I fought it. But it has to be done. And the world will write stories about how wrong I am and everything. And without a doubt, I wished it could be done a different way. But there is no way to make this right. I spent one day here in the spring of 2003. The Thompson brothers were down below my house here in Grand Lake, digging a foundation for a house. One day, I had happened to go out the driveway, and Larry Thompson was standing out by his truck by himself, so I drove up to him and had a few words with him. Basically what I told him was that, Larry, I actually called him Ron first. He says, Ron's dead. And I says, I'm sorry, Larry. And I says, but listen, maybe it's good that Ron's dead. Because, no, it isn't, he said. And I says, about in 1992, your family made some decisions that financially affected my life for the rest of my life. And I can't afford it. And it cost me at least a minimum of $300,000. And I says, you need to pay me. And he says, what are you talking about? I basically told him, I said, don't play ignorant with me. And he shut right up. He says, you know what I'm talking about. I says, your family made those decisions, and I'm referring to the ones where they kept me off, where Ron Thompson kept me off the sanitation district. I said, you know about that? And I says, you owe me. And I says, I want $300,000 from you. And he says, it'll never happen. And I says, I guarantee you, Larry, I'm going to collect. I says, it's a duty I have. I says, I basically can't call myself a man if I don't make this right. And I says, Ron died, and I think of all the money that he got, that you inherited, because he died from your father's estate, that you had all inherited, I think that you ought to probably pay me with that. And he says, not going to happen. And I says, well, I am going to collect. And I drove away. I got about 4 or 5 truck lengths away. And he basically confirmed in my mind right there that he knew what I was talking about. And he knew what had been done. Because he had one thing to say. He screamed it at me as I'm about 5 truck lengths away. He screamed, you can suck my dick. And I stopped the truck and I laughed out loud and I told him, I says, that will never happen. Well, when someone is that frustrated that they've got to say something like that, they know. You could tell it in the tone of his voice. You could tell it by what he said. You could tell it by the way he acted. He's a cowardly bastard. He's a Catholic. And I think they are some of the biggest cowards I have ever met. I've known it for years. They have a different idea. They read from a different Bible. And they believe, I truly believe that they believe the only way that they can stay on top and give the Pope his money and all this stuff is to keep their neighbor down. There is no building to the Catholics, to their neighbor. They don't believe in encouraging their neighbor. And that's sad. That's so wrong. I never ran into anyone, other than in my small town when I was a kid, where everybody's always backstabbing you in a small community. But I lived in Denver. I had shop in Commerce City, one in Aurora, one in Inglewood, one in Lakewood. I had one shop in Boulder. I never felt that someone was, intentionally working against me. You got employees who are lazy when you're not watching them. They're just screwing off. But, that's employees. I never had anybody sit there and plan to cut me out of an opportunity to make money, like the Thompsons did when they denied me access to the West Sanitation District. Had they not done that, I can assure you, the outcome, the concrete plant, the whole thing would have been completely different. I'm not saying I'd have been that much happier, but I would have never found out that they tried to fuck me. if they would have let me alone, I wouldn't have had this righteous anger that I have towards the Thompsons, their hierarchy, their attitude that they have left in that community for so many years, that has spread and like a cancer through that community, and so many people think like they do. Screw your neighbor. If they had stayed out of my business, the outcome when they started that concrete plant, look at what would have been there. I would have had a building built in 93 that would have had renters in it for 7 years, from 93 until 99, 2000. Till today, maybe. You know, maybe the renters would have all moved out because of the dust. I would have had, if that would have been their feeling, they would have been on my side. We would have protested harder. Maybe the town council would have listened. But because the town council had gone to the effort in 91 to rezone that property, and I had screwed up the town's plans, the town had a hard-on for Marv Heemeyer. They didn't stop and think. Marv didn't have any malice towards us. This is a sign to not do this. No, they kept it in their hardened hearts and said, we'll get him. And they started getting me in 1992 when they kept me off the sanitation district. They started getting me when Gus Harris would not sell the property to me. They got me when Gus Harris sold the property to Cody Dochev. They got me when they issued the building permit to Cody Dochev for the concrete plant and denied that it was for the concrete plant, although everybody knows it was, because it is the concrete plant today. Look at the September 7th, 2000 issue of the Sky High News, where that concrete foundation was. That's their building. Are we all stupid? Come on. They knew. And when I would ask them these questions, which you won't find in the minutes, they would just shut right up. They'd stonewall you. They didn't have an answer. Neither did I. I mean, I have an answer because I was giving them the answer. And I shoot the truth in their face, and they couldn't deal with it. And I'm sorry. They're going to have to deal with it. I guarantee you, I am going to make them deal with it. It is my duty. God has asked me to do this. You know, you can call it revenge. I don't know. I don't doubt that there is. I stop and think. We as human beings, we can put up with doing without unbelievably too much. And I've heard that from motivational speakers. I've read it in books, seen it in seminars where people would talk about that. It's amazing how much we are willing to do without. You know, I sold the property for $400,000. I mean, I had to pay taxes on it, which I did. But I stuck, $360,000 in my pocket. You know? I didn't stick it in my pocket. I gave it away. It's gone, because now money means nothing to me. I've given my house away. I do not need this cabin here in Grand Lake. I've given my snowmobiles. I've given those away this year. Everything is gone. What I own is just going to be a pittance compared to what I'm going to take. But hopefully the community will learn something from this and become wiser. And instead of hating their neighbor and keeping your neighbor down, they will love your neighbor. There may not be a lot of love here, because you can look at it and say it's coming from me. I've developed malice towards these people. I couldn't live with myself the rest of my life if I didn't have a plan to make this right. I feel pretty worthless. And I know I probably shouldn't, but to know that for 10 years, the people in the town of Granby did not want me there. And the fact that I was making good money by the 99, within, 6 years after I started that business, that I was making a pretty good income, I'm sure it made them very jealous. I'm sure everything about me made them jealous. I'm sorry that they felt that way. That is a bad way to feel. You know, I wasn't trying to keep up with the Joneses, I know. It may be, I say that, maybe that's not true. I was always trying to be the Joneses. Do it my way. Look at me. See what I do. This is what I've done. You all have the opportunity to do what I've done. I haven't done much. I mean, I graduated from high school to 28th of my class of 29. It's no big deal. I wasn't intelligent. I wasn't smart. I wasn't stupid. But I wasn't educated. I didn't have the knack to sit in a classroom and be a bookworm. I don't know why. I may have. I don't know why. But God built me maybe clear back in the 4th grade when I broke my arm. Because that's when my grades started falling off. I don't know. He had this planned clear back then. Maybe, if you believe in predestination, which I do, maybe it was planned before I was born. I don't know. I don't understand predestination that much, but I do believe in it. So here we are, and I am at peace with what I am about to do. I have to be. And although I've wrestled with it for years, and you know, God gave me this last winter off again because He knew that I wasn't strong, and that was so unique that this didn't get done last year. How the sale of the business kind of interrupted my progress on my my Marv Komatsu. What did I call it? I got a name for it. Oh, my MK tank. That I didn't get the old MK tank done last fall is amazing, because it should have happened. But you know, God has His timing, His plans made out, and they're to be, and it looks like it's going to be. Because the one thing that I have wanted to do is get caught. I had hoped that somebody would catch me, and that this whole thing would stop, and that would be a good sign for me not to do it. I've hoped. I haven't played the lottery a lot, but I've hoped that I would win the lottery, and I could forget this whole thing. I could move on, because then I would have my $300,000, and I would have my life back, and I could live the way I want to live. But you know, I had that money. This cabin was bought and paid for free. I didn't have a rental payment. People will say that, why did he do that? He had such a good life. He had a better life than me anyway. Well, I can understand that to a point. It's not what I deserved. You meddled in my business and took what I deserved away. You took advantage of my good nature. Well, I think there's something you should learn here. For as good as a man can be, also can he be as bad. And another thing you should learn is that when you visit evil upon someone, be assured it will revisit you. And that is what is happening. It is a good thing. Because I think the community of Grandview will be stronger. I think that they will understand after years, if they ever hear this tape, if they ever hear the truth, if they're ever willing to listen. That was one thing that the council would not do, ever. They were not, because they knew that they were going to have this concrete plant. Everything that I or the 50 or 80 people that were at those meetings initially, they would fall on deaf ears. Because I was the only one, the one person, I should say, that was going to be adversely affected so negatively by the impact of this concrete plant. I stood there and fought till the end. I spent the money. I let that attorney Dietza milk me because I was fearful. I was weak. Understood. I spent the money. I fought the good fight. To come to realize that I had to do what I have to do now. It's a sad, sad way to do it. But it's a cross that I'm going to carry. And I'm carrying it in God's name, I believe. I truly believe this. I would have been caught. Something would have happened. I mean, there's still some time left. It still may not happen. It could be that the day it does start, the machine quits before I even get out of the building. It may quit right after I get out of the building. It may quit halfway through what I want to do. You know? And that's where it's supposed to stop, because God will have stopped it. I believe that machine, other than sometimes that it won't go in gear, I haven't figured that out yet, but I'm hoping that, that's only happened a couple of times, and then all of a sudden by itself it went into gear. So I don't know what the problem is there, but that could be a very critical problem that stops me. There's just so many things I've hoped for that I wouldn't have to do this, but I'm here today, the 13th of April, 2004, and we're moving on, and I'm trying to make this tape and be done with it. Anyway, I need to digress here a little bit. The town, the people that were on the boards, the Peterson lady, she'd been on that board for so long. She knew the history, what the town wanted. She knew the history of the FDIC. They had so many people on that board. The fat lady that owned the flower shop or whatever she owned. I can't even remember her name. Casey at Gamble's. So many of those people had these sentiments towards the FDIC, which had been permeating the community since the FDIC did what they did. And here I am, a beneficiary of the FDIC, and they were definitely out to get their feelings, I guess, what's the word? Appeased, which is something else, I tried to wrongly. For years, I tried to appease Cody Docheff's misguided anger. I tried to talk to him. I tried to be friendly towards him. Talk to his kid. I bought every bit of concrete, which turned out to be shit. He ripped me off on that concrete so bad, but, I tried to buy all my concrete from the guy, and, I had no malice towards this man or any person in Granby, and yet they had to do this to me. And for what was their guise? The sales tax, the increased amount of sales tax revenue. And I tried to explain to them, you don't have that much sales tax here for the detriment that you're causing to the community. All of the products are delivered, most of the products are delivered out in the county. And I says, the few that you're going to sell infiltrators right here in town, people are going to come up and pick up some manholes, might even pick up a septic system once in a while. Who knows? They're going to pick up, what? Maybe 5% of the business? Okay. What is that for what you're causing the downgrading of the community, of the motels? Now we got a motel with concrete plant on one side. Before we had it with just the railroad tracks, waking everybody up at night, going back and forth. Okay. Sometimes you're going to get a motel like this. Now you got one with a fucking concrete plant with absolutely no hours of operation restrictions. Other than what the federal government, guidelines are imposed, which is everybody. But those concrete plants are not in the center of town. They're out in the country for the most part. Only their malice, their resentment towards the outsiders, was their motive for making sure that concrete got in town. And it's just uncanny. After it got started, how I tried to stop it, how every time I did, I failed. It told me one thing, that God wanted these people to learn. And He knew that I eventually would get to the point where I wouldn't put up with what they were taking away from me, for what they had denied me. God knew Marv Heemeyer very well. He put me up here. God knew Marv Heemeyer very well. He put me up here. He put me up here. Initially, I expect to stop this whole process, which it did. It did for 10 years. And that was God's will. But it was not God's will that they do what they did to me. That was man's will. That was their will. And, it's effective. Don't agree with it. I could never agree with it. When man's will is to harm his neighbor and keep him from prospering, it's wrong. And that's basically that's all they did. The many years that I was there. So we're coming up on that day when I'm going to do what I have to do, and we'll see what happens. I know that it's God's will. It's going to be God's will be done. It's not mine. So we'll see what happens. That's just the way it is. It's about 8:30 in the evening on the 13th. All or most of the documentation between me and the town while this was going on, and between me and this attorney Dietza, has been put on paper, and it's in a plastic bag in the back of the Subaru. And there's a chronological order there, but I don't have that with me here, so I'm kind of jumping around. But it's in there, and if you put it together, how it happened, it's all there, and that will basically back up what I'm saying. It's also in the computer I have here, which I think I downloaded a lot of that stuff onto paper, and that's what's in the Subaru. But the computer is going to go to South Dakota, and it'll be stored where it's supposed to be. And I would hope that the people that have it for one day could figure it out to know the truth. And I guess if they do figure it all out, and they still figure I'm wrong, well, that's the way they figure. That's the way people figure. I don't think that I would be making this tape. I don't think I'd be still sitting here, 2-3 years after all this stuff was done, 4 years, whatever. It'd still be bothering me. It took my whole retirement away. I've got no life. The life I've got, sure, I've got a life if you want to settle for that kind of a life, but that's not what I've been taught to do. You settle for things if that's the way it goes. If I had gone bankrupt and lost a muffler shop with the property and went to an auction later on, the FDIC got it back or whatever, and I went to that auction and I didn't bring enough money with me to buy it, it's a good sign, that I shouldn't have it back and that I should go do something else. But if I was supposed to have it, if I was supposed to continue on, if I was supposed to get it back, I would have bought it. And that would be a good sign to go on. But Cody didn't bring enough money. and he lost, and he just has refused to give it up. The town, because their plans that they made for rezoning that 2 acres, when they rezoned Gus Harris's 2 acres south of me, when I stepped in, when God put me there to buy that property, and their plans were done with, they were eliminated, they were stopped. They should have moved on. They should have looked for a better place. And I know Cody wanted to. This is something important. He wanted the concrete plant to be out there by Hot Sulphur Springs, just east of Hot Sulphur Springs. And I didn't really care. I didn't go to any of the meetings or anything. But they turned it down, and it was way outside of town. It was downwind of the town. But this was very interesting, and this is why we should have had a change of venue in the court proceedings. We should have had this moved to Steamboat, because the judge who sat at our trial, the judge had gone to those meetings in 97. I believe it was 97 when Cody tried to get that out there by Hot Sulphur Springs. The judge owned property across the highway to the north. And the judge and his wife went to the meetings for the county to oppose this concrete plant being there, because it was going to devalue their property. And the letters are there at the county, at the Hot Sulphur Springs, at the courthouse there. And I found this out a couple of weeks after I lost the case. I'd heard somebody said that he had fought this judge had. And so I went down to the court and I found these records, and there's copies of those are in the back of that Subaru, I believe. His letter from his wife and what she said. And these were strictly, from the judge's heart. It wasn't from his wife, it was from him, because he was at those meetings. And it's right in the record. For when you go to those meetings, you have to sign in, and he signed in. And he should have recused himself from doing this. But by doing what he did, by making the judgment in favor of the Dochefs and the town, he ensured that it would never come back to be at that location in the gravel pit across from his property. And, my attorney, as paid off as he was, however they got to him, or whatever his thinking was, he even told me that I should write the judge and ask him to set aside his verdict, and that we should have a new judge redo it. But what was the point? I spend another $50,000 with this attorney so that we go fight it someplace else? That's all he was doing, was making money on the deal. He didn't care if I win or lose. As a matter of fact, in one of the letters he sent me, which is a copy in the computer and in the back of the Subaru, he said that he wouldn't appeal it. I always told him, I said, Dietz, if this is good enough to take to court the first time, in the face of all the negative feelings that I have about winning it, I says, it's good enough if we lose to appeal it to a higher court. Dietz wouldn't do it. He would not appeal it, even after I told him that the judge had fought this concrete plant when it was going to be across from his property, which wasn't even downwind of the property. It was right beside it, but it was for the most part upwind of the darn concrete plant, and it property wouldn't have been affected near as badly as my property was, or the town property of my neighbors. And anyway, Dietz said that he would not appeal it, and he said this in a letter, because he had future cases coming up in front of Judge Doucette, and he felt that if he appealed Judge Doucette's ruling, that it would affect adversely on him in these other cases. Well, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is called, but without a doubt, it was wrong. If he was willing to take my money for all those months and years that we fought this thing, convincing me all along that we were going to win, that it was the right thing, I was doing the right thing. You know, he really should have done it without being paid. But, and I should have been smart enough to tell him that clear back there when when they made that resolution in 2000, that he shouldn't get paid anymore. You know, but I didn't know about how towns operate. Especially, I didn't know they were that crooked. So, you know, I made a mistake. I made a lot of mistakes. And what did they teach me? I mean, why? So I learned how to go to FDIC auctions maybe and buy property, and if there was the previous owner bid against me at the future auctions when I bought this property, that I would just sell it real quick. What good does that do me when I'm 65 years old, if that's when the FDIC starts selling properties that have been foreclosed on again, if there's a glut of those on the market because the economy drops? I don't need that kind of money at 65. I needed it when I was in my 40s and my 50s. That's when it should have been here, and it's not here. So the money that I've got is of no use to me because I am not going to live the life they want me to live. You know, they think that I should have to stay down there in Granby. I should have kept my muffler shop going. I should have put up with all the dust, all the snickers. You know, the town council. I'd pass them in the post office, and they'd snicker at me after they knew I lost. On the street, Casey Farrell. I mean, the guy, what a barbarian. You know, he's just a very sick man. He comes across as being one of those good guys, and he's nothing like that at all. He's part of the problem. As we're with that whole system down there, you know, the good old boy system. When you come up against a person like me, you know, you got to help me. Throw me a bone. You wouldn't throw me anything. You know, you couldn't. I mean, when Cody first came to those meetings, he said he would put up walls and he would do all this different stuff. We don't have any of it. It doesn't make any sense. Other than that it was the good old boys patting each other on the back. Well, you should have made me, if not one of the good old boys, you should have given me a bone to get out of there so that I could leave you alone and do what you wanted. You know, I put the property up for sale almost as soon as this PDO started. Get me out of here. But you couldn't read that. And if you did, you read it so that you said, ha, we got him. We know he wants to get out of there. We know he knows he's screwed. Let's really screw him. You know, that's exactly what their attitude was. And they did. You know, I had no choice. What was I supposed to do? So when I had my auction, these people, I netted, when I sold the property by myself to Travis Bussey and his partner Bob, I netted $400,000 on the sale because I didn't use a realtor. At the auction, I would have had to pay the auctioneer 10% of the sales price to net the $400,000. I had it listed as a minimum reserve of $450,000. And remember, I am forfeiting my business. The goodwill, all that, what I would call equity, I'm giving it up. And I says, look, if I advertise it at a minimum of $450,000, we pay 10% of that to the auctioneer. That leaves me with $405,000. If they would have bought it at that auction for $450,000, I would have walked away. But there wasn't one bid. And it also is unique how I had 5 things that were reserved at the auction: the bulldozer, the land, a Cabelco backhoe, my '72 Nova, and a pair of jet skis. It is unique how the jet skis made the minimum, the Cabelco made the minimum, the Nova went over the minimum, and they sold. But what two things did I keep? The the Komatsu dozer, and the property. So stop and think about this. I wasn't supposed to walk away from this because the Komatsu was still there. The build property was still there. If I would have gotten a bid of $450,000, I would have netted $5,000 more than I actually netted. Is that what it cost for you people to not pay? Because what I'm going to do is going to be worth way more than the $5,000 if you get... I know I'm not very good at explaining this, but I hope you get my drift here. You blew it. Maybe you say it didn't happen because it would have cost you $50,000 extra than what I actually netted. Well, you were telling everybody, Cody was telling everybody that I talked to that the property was only worth $300,000. Well, Cody, you were lying to people because I netted $400,000. I would have netted $405,000 had I sold it at the auction. You guys could have gotten rid of me. But that was one of those things I said, God, if it brings $450,000, I'm out of here. I'm done. I'll forget it. I'll live. I'll get on with my life. It didn't bring it. It didn't bring it. It just amazes me that it didn't, because I was so close to walking away from this. Anyway, so I got the dozer and I got the building. Another thing that was very, very unique was, now how am I going to do, what am I going to do with this dozer? Okay, I had it up on the driveway for sale, and according to the Ritchie Brothers auction sales at that time, that dozer was selling nationally for as much as $43,000. Okay, I don't believe that any of the Komatsu D355s were as in good a shape as this one was. This Komatsu was owned by, I believe it was Fresno Tractor, and they'd owned it for about 6 years and had rented it out. And this Komatsu was in excellent condition. If any Komatsu D355 should have brought $54,000, which is what I had it at, that one should have. I was willing at the auction to take $33,000 for it. Couldn't get a bid. I got a $20,000 bid. That was the only real bid we got. Well, I had $24,000 in it. I'm not going to sell it for that, especially when Ritchie Brothers says it's worth $43,000. So I kept the dozer. What was unique, after everything's gone, I find out that the dozer is 2 inches shorter than 12 feet and will go into the storage building. It is 1 inch narrower than the door. If I take the little bottom, the edging grousers off, or whatever they call them on the dozer blade, if I take those off, that dozer will go in my storage building. So I says, well, let's put it inside, because then I can build it to do what I am supposed to do. And I could not believe it. I put up a 4x8 piece of plywood on each side of the door so that the blade would go through, drove that thing up there, got out to where the cab was close to the door, checked the clearance, and I had 2-3 inches of clearance. I drove it right in there. It fit through that door so tight you almost had to grease it to get it in there. Why did that particular dozer fit in the building? Why had I not bought one of the D9s at that Fresno auction? It doesn't make any sense. You know, a D9's got more horsepower. It's probably more dependable than a Komatsu. If I'd have bought one of them, I'd have never got it in that building, because they were much taller than the Komatsu was. So I'm thinking, well, this is good. I get it inside, now I can build it. Must be what I'm supposed to do. Put it inside under the guise that, you know, it's winter time. I'm not going to be here. Everything's sold. I don't have a muffler shop anymore. I'm going to go snowmobiling. I got to keep it out of the weather, and I got to keep it away from the friggin' criminals down there in Granby who are going to come by and sabotage it, which did happen to my place more than once in the 10 years, 11 years that I was down there. People would steal different things and so forth. I mean, it's a sick town. Other than have the store that I had in Commerce City, the muffler shop, which got broke into one time, I never had any problems with theft in any of the businesses that I ever owned, or any of the shops that I ever run. But in Granby, I had problems. And there may be good reasons for that, because it wasn't sitting on the main street and so forth, and whatever, you know. But there were more break-ins in my building in Granby than any business I have ever owned. There was 4 to be exact. 3 were attempted, I should say, where they didn't get in, or if they did, they didn't take anything. The one time that they did take anything, they stole some wheels off of a street rod that I had sitting in front of the building. And those people got caught. And I got restitution from one of them. There was 3 kids. One of them paid his restitution. The other 2, for all I know, they're in jail today. But it's just the way that town is. It's just, you know, they're poor. Right now, I think that everybody's probably got a lot of money in their pockets, because we've had pretty good economy up here the last 5 or 6 years. But those people all could have $1 million each. They would still be poor. They're poor in mind, they're poor in pocketbook, they're poor in spirit, they're poor in heart. They're just poor people. And I don't know, you know, it's they need to stop thinking that they have to get some self-esteem, some self-respect, and love their neighbors, and not try to deprive them of a right to make a living, to have their dreams realized. And it's sad that people down there do that. And I'm talking about the leaders of the community. They keep people down, because if they didn't, the real cream of the crop would rise to the top, and knock them from their position. But of course, their definition of cream of the crop is to see how devious you can be to screw your neighbor. If you're devious enough and you're smart enough and wily enough to screw your neighbor, then you're the cream and you should be on top. You shouldn't earn it through doing honest, hard work. You have to get together, have secret meetings. You have to spend years conniving, waiting for an opportunity to screw your neighbor. Well, I've never done it, and I ain't planning on doing it, other than what I'm doing now. And this will be the first time that I've ever done something like that, the way they want it to be done, the way they do it, to do it in secret, to do things behind their back, to lie to you when you ask them what their plans are, and they won't tell you. I've had to do that. People ask me, what am I doing? Oh, I'm not doing anything. I spent the whole summer of 2003 in that friggin' building, lived there without a shower for as much as 4 days at a time, working on that dozer, getting it prepared to do what I have to do. And that's another thing that was so uncanny. We talk about getting caught. Why didn't I get caught? Why haven't I been caught? Or why didn't I get caught up to now? Last fall, when Travis and Bob go to buy the place, they need to have their insurance man come in and see the storage building. They want to see inside. Now, I had put up a temporary wall, and I had insulated that whole building that summer, and had started working on this dozer. I had this dozer about half done, maybe 3/4 done by the time they wanted this insurance guy to come in. I had to clean that whole shop up, hide all the steel, the welders, hide all that stuff in a little room in the corner I built out of 2x4s and canvas. And then what did I do? I took polypropylene tarps and I covered the dozer, which I had the whole cab armor on. I had about half of the engine armor on, and I covered it up with tarps and taped it all shut. And I says, maybe this is where I'm supposed to get caught. They're going to come in here and they're going to get nosy. They're going to want to know what's under this dozer. They're going to find out that I'm building this, and somebody's going to go call the cops, and they're going to put a stop to it. Well, that's the way it's supposed to be. Catch me, okay? They came in there after I had the shop all cleaned up, had everything put away, had the dozer covered up with these polypropylene tarps. I even put a lift in there to lift all this steel onto the dozer. This lift was about 20 feet long, had a 20-foot arm on it with an electric winch, and it swung on a post. And that's how I lifted all this steel to get it on there. Okay? The lift is there. So these guys come in. Oh, well, what's this? This is the dozer. Oh, okay. Well, what's this lift, they say. And I say, well, I made up this story about this guy from Minnesota who was a professor at the university there and was working on a system to, it was called, I can't even think of it right now, when you deep freeze things. Cryogenics or something like that. I said this professor was perfecting a cryogenics cooling system to go in the intake of the diesel engine, which would cool the air and increase the performance of the engine and increase the hourly fuel consumption. And they bought it. I says, but the lift goes when I leave. When this guy comes to pick his dozer up after he's done all this testing, we put this lift in so we could lift this big 800-pound condenser up on the back, which he had mismeasured, and they had to take it back to Minnesota. And then he's got this other evaporator that we had to lift, plus the pump has got to go on there. We're running that off of a drive, an auxiliary drive, PTO drive that they've got on the engine. I had this all bullshit story, and they went along with it. I said, I couldn't believe it when they walked out the door. I'm safe. How come they didn't catch me? It was right there under their nose. Well, I wasn't supposed to get caught. Not yet. Maybe I will. Maybe this whole thing will come to stop early. That's the way it's supposed to be. I will accept that. They took away my life. They took away my future. They took away my hope. They took away any desires that I had. I cannot operate in a community of people that does that to their neighbors. I wasted 13 years of my life down there because the Thompsons were pissed off that I bought that property. You put yourself in my shoes and tell me how you would feel at 50 years old realizing that you've wasted 10 years of your life because of someone's malice, because of their jealousy, because of their greed, because of their hate. I'm 52 now. That's why I talk about 12, 13 years. It was 10 years then. It just isn't right. I cannot. There used to be a time when I could withstand these types of losses. I could never afford them. You can never afford to lose money. You can withstand it, and you can recover sometimes. Most of the time I looked at it that way, it was because I was young, and I was strong, and I could go out and physically do the work. I'm 52 now. I can't do it. I can't withstand it. I can't recover. We're talking about losing $300,000, which, along with the sale of the property, would have been my retirement, would have let me go on to do other things, to make more wealth. But when you take 10 years of my life away and just piss it down the drain and are happy about it and ecstatic about it. No. I've taken all I can take. How I react, yes, it's a reaction. That's how it's supposed to be. That's how God built me. You know? It is not my fault. What that one guy say? Those who made me your enemies, or enemy, those who made me your enemy, they are the guilty ones. The Thompsons are guilty. The Dochefs are guilty. The Granby Town Board is guilty. The Granby Planning Commission is guilty. My neighbors are guilty. It took all of you 10 years to get me. And you got me, no doubt about it. I got screwed big time. We talked today about it to Dave Patner. He knows I got fucked. And he knows that they do it. And they get away with it. There's nothing you can do about it, he says. Well, I'm going to do something about it. It may only change people for a generation. Maybe two. May not change them at all. Maybe make them worse. That's the way it's supposed to be. And that's the way it will be. God's will be done. Through me. So anyway, this is tape 3. It's about 10:05 on the 13th of April, 2004. I want to say that I believe that I am an American patriot. I believe in the free enterprise system. I believe in a level playing field of competition. If you want to change that level playing field of competition to your advantage, basically you give me license to do that also when my opportunity comes around. Because you're the leaders of the community. And you set the example. And you do the teaching, and you through example, through your actions, you show the community how things are supposed to be done. I am one of the greatest followers you would ever meet. Because I know you cannot be a good leader unless you are a good follower. I have followed all the parameters that was supposed to have followed to get that property. You, on the other hand, the town of Granby, the people of Granby, the leaders of Granby, have not. You have conspired against me. And that, in doing so, and I understand it's a conspiracy, we can't prove anything. And with you, the way you change your minutes at all your meetings, I understand that. It can't be proven. I'm not that diligent to catch every problem and attack everything that you do. There's too many of you. It's too big of a task. But you have given me license through your example to do what I need to do. When I do this, that levels the playing field in my favor. So now we've got a lopsided playing field. Because when I come back at you, I'm going to destroy your side of the playing field. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to get, I always believed in paying my bills. You got to make money. And you do that, if you got a champagne income with a beer taste, you're going to do well. And that's what I've always had. Always believed that's the way it should be. That's the only way I could get ahead. If you got a champagne taste with a champagne income, you're even. If you got a beer taste with a beer income, you're just even. If you got a champagne taste with beer income, you're screwed. So you got to have a beer taste with a champagne income, then you'll get ahead. And that's what I've always had. You've taken that away from me. You've taken that income away completely. And how you did it allows me to do what I need to do to make this right. And I'm taking it a step further in that, in leveling this playing field, I've always said, never get even. Don't get even. You either have to walk away or you have to get ahead. I am going to get ahead. Or maybe I'm just going to put you down. But it's going to cost you millions compared to the $50,000 you could have gotten out at my auction. You could have walked away. Compared to the $600,000 that I initially asked, who, a professional realtor, agreed with me on the value of that property and business was worth $595,000. She listed the property, had it listed for 2 years. We reduced it and reduced it and reduced it. And nobody, because of your anger, because of your malice, because of your hate, you would not work with me. So now, I believe that I have to leave this world with a debt so great to you it can never be repaid until the final judgment. We'll see what that cost is. Will it be too great? Maybe. But there's got to be some good come of this. And at this point, there is no good. I am here short of what I deserved. All I ever wanted was what I deserved. You denied me of that. You are there thinking you have gotten away with destroying a person, an outsider, and you have gotten your way. And that's wrong. That was man's will. It was not God's will. It was with your input. So now this, true, it is with my input also that I come back at you. But you gave me license to come back at you. You taught me how to act towards your neighbor. And that's how I'm going to do. And you will learn this lesson, that is not the way to do it. I am going to sacrifice my life, my future, to show you, my miserable future that you gave me, to show you that what you did was wrong. I know the newspaper guy, he'd never admit it. That guy is told so many lies. That's one thing about lying. You tell a lie, usually you got to tell 5 more to cover that up. And then you got to tell 5 lies for each one of those 5 to cover those 5 up. And it just escalates. And pretty soon, all you're doing is lying. And you always, you get caught in a lie, and how you do, you tell 10 more lies, and you bullshit your way out of it. I never used to do that. I never could do that. I didn't want to do that. If I was honest with people, straightforward, they knew where I stood. The deal was over with. It was done. The bad thing about being honest and straightforward and doing that is people know where you stand and they try to take advantage of you. They take advantage of your good nature. They take advantage of the fact that they know that you're a good guy, you are a straight shooter, and that you're not going to retaliate on them when they fuck you. Well, folks, most of the time I believe that's probably true. But God built me to be here to prove to you that what you have been doing for God knows how many years is wrong. You picked on the wrong man. I'm not tough. I'm not that strong. What I'm going to do is above me. And God gave me that peace years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, in that hot tub, that I had to do this, that I could not do it without God's help, that it was His strength that would spur me on at 51 and 52 years old to get this job done. He would get the job done at the pace that I could do it. And I believe that is why He gave me last winter off. I was not fast enough. I did not have the energy that I, in my 40s and 50s, early 50s, that I had when I was in my 30s. So He gave me the winter off. He says, Marv, You're not going to get it done. Go take off this winter. Go play. But next spring, after the hill climb, you've got to do this. You've got to get this done. And that was where I was. That was my goal, so to speak, was take the winter off, relax. You know, maybe something would come up to change my mind, that I wouldn't do that I would completely dismantle the MK tank. Didn't happen, folks. Didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? You had a whole winter to have something happen good to Marvin. It didn't happen. So here I am back there doing what I have to do. I'm building the MK tank. And like I said earlier, maybe I'm repeating myself here, but God may be giving me a wide open path in building this to come up dead up against a brick wall. If I'm dead 30 seconds after I get out of that building, if I'm dead through an accident or a piece of steel that I lift up on the dozer yet drops down, something malfunctions, injures me, puts me in the hospital, kills me, whatever, I'll accept that. But you're going to know what my intentions were. Because basically my deadline, I've had deadlines and I've had to postpone them. You know, first it was supposed to be the spring of 2003 that this would happen. Then that got put off a month, and then I just didn't get things done. And it got put off until the fall, and now it's been put off till the spring. Well, you're going to know how intent I was on teaching you people that what you're doing is wrong. There's going to be other things that you're going to realize, that you're going to understand, hopefully. And maybe that's all that needs to be done to stop you from the greed you have, the hate you have, the anger and malice to outsiders. It's not good, folks. I don't think that just knowing what I'm doing is enough. I think God will bless me to get the machine done, to drive it, to do the stuff that I have to do up to a point, and then the machine will do one of 2 or 3 times. You're either going to blow me right off the fucking streets, I'm going to have a heart attack and die because I'm all pumped up. The machine's going to break. Or maybe it'll go all day and I'll run out of fuel. I don't know. I got a lot of fuel in that thing, let me tell you. So I'm trying to be as prepared as I can be to do what I believe needs to be done, what God has inspired me to do. And we'll see once where it goes. You know? Because it definitely is in God's hands. It is not in my hands. Without a doubt, I'm building it. But there's a reason why I am successful at continuing this project. Maybe it's just for me. Maybe I will get caught. And maybe I'll see how foolish it was. But if I don't, I know I'm going to be dead. There's no doubt about that in my mind. I am the co-captain of my life. God is first, I am second. Okay? This is where He's taken me. This is where you have tried to control my life. You have tried to be the captain of my life. You do not run my life. You do not determine my income. You do not determine what I desire, what I want, what I deserve. I determine that, and my God determines that. Not you people. No people do that. If they do, then you're a slave to them. And I am not a slave to man. I am a slave to God. And I am a slave to what God tells me I should have. And that's why we are where we are. Let's stop here. You know, this may be unimportant, but had a friend here in Grand Lake. Have a friend lives in Denver, owns property up here. His name's Curtis Wright. I've known him for about 3 years. Pretty good guy. He's from Iowa. This guy walked away from a bad deal there in Minnesota, I guess. He had a partner who screwed him out of a lot of money. And he tells me that, he dwelled on this for quite a while, and he rationalized this, that he deserved to get screwed, and that he needed to quit thinking about his enemies and what they had done to him. He needed to be thinking about his friends, and that's why he lives today. He lives for his friends. Well, that's comforting to him, and that's good, and that's what it takes. I firmly believe that one day he will regret not taking some kind of action to recoup what he lost in Minnesota. Now, he may put it out of his mind for the rest of his life, but I know that affected that man in an adverse way. It hurt him. It killed his spirit to a large degree. This man, he's a hell of a wrestler. Wrestled for the Hawkeyes. I don't know. He wrestled for some Iowa team. He hates it when I get it wrong. Anyway, he was a good wrestler. And he had a lot of will and a lot of strength. And he was a winner. And when he lost there in Minnesota to that guy, basically I guess he walked away from the company, and the guy was rid of him, and the guy went on to sell the business a short time thereafter for quite a huge amount of money, and Curtis lost all that. Well, I guess Curtis needs to be beat up even worse to get to that point where he says, enough is enough. I have been beaten to a point where I'm not going to take it anymore. And believe me, I have been beaten in my life. I have lost a greater fortune than I have, without a doubt. But I don't think that's what God had planned for me. I think God expected me to get that. And He expects me to do something to those who kept me now from getting that. From getting what I deserved. Well, I will get what I deserve in trying to make this justice, to get this, make this all right. I will get what I deserve. But I'm not afraid of death. That was another thing. A movie I watched said, there's a lot of things that'll gnaw at a man's heart and soul, a lot worse than death. And this will gnaw at me for the rest of my life. And I'm not going to live with it. I may die with it, but I will not live with it. I lost $57,000 in the mid-'80s over at Toponis on a land scam that this realtor devised a scheme where he would have wraparound mortgages, and a corporation would sell these lots, and after so many years they would go bankrupt, and we as purchasers would have paid the county commissioner of Routt County, his name was Visitainer, so many thousands of dollars. He'd have made thousands of dollars in real estate commissions, and everybody would come out of it winning except the owners of the land. And when we finally lost everything, there was 12 of us, I believe, in the group that still owned land there. Of the over 100 lots that had been sold over that 8-year period or 10-year period, most of the people had given up on their dreams to have that 40-acre parcel there, and they let the property be foreclosed on earlier. We were naive enough to believe that finally the economy would turn around and everything would get going. We didn't realize it was a legal scam. And there was 12 of us, we went and met with Francona and the attorneys in Boulder. We spent a day with this guy, paid him $1,500 to have this meeting, and he told us that there was nothing that he could do because the way it was set up. It was legal what they did, and it was called a forfeiture of equity, and the court frowned on that. But if we went to court, it cost us $30,000, and we'd still lose. Well, I walked away from that deal. There were two of the people I believe were close enough to having their lots paid off that they paid them off and they got their 40 acres. But the rest of us weren't well heeled enough to do that. So I walked away from that. It was $57,000 loss. And I wrote it off on my taxes, and I probably got, I don't know, $15,000, $18,000 back, where I didn't have to pay taxes anyway. But it was wrong. I had a partner, the first partner I had in the muffler business. He cost me well over $10,000. The first franchise I bought went bankrupt within 4 months after me giving in their franchise fee. That was a $10,000 loss. The real estate that I bought, the apartment complex, I owned that damn thing for 2.5 years, 3 years, I can't remember. Believed this realtor who went to this Christian Reformed church that I was attending. You know, I trusted this man. Wrong, Marv, wrong. Never trust man at all. Trust God and trust yourself, but don't trust another man, or just don't. I had to learn this the hard way. You know, I broke even on that apartment. I think I probably lost money, but I want to tell myself I broke even. That way I don't feel bad about it. But if I would have the money that I have lost, you know, I'd be a multi-millionaire. I don't understand it. I guess I'm a dumb person. I know that I'm a dumb person. I'm not as witty as some. I'm not as sharp as some. I don't know that that's the backbone of America, though. You know, I don't know what the backbone of America is anymore. Anyway, I have been screwed a lot of times, and I walked away from it. And I said, I don't need it. Just like this guy in Boulder. The man quit paying me last November. Walked away from a $130,000 note. The IRS confiscated his house. They wanted to take the business, but fortunately I had the Secretary of UCC filing with the Secretary of State. They didn't get the equipment. So what do I have to do? I sell everything for $25,000 bid. That was the bid I got. A good family is going to get the business. It's going to enhance their future. I'm happy to do it. I sell it to them first with the $25,000. If I take that off the $130,000 that the guy still owed me, this Doug Davis still owed me, he owes me $105,000. I'm walking away from it. I'm not going to chase him down. I'm not going to go find his dad and shoot him. I'm not going to shoot Doug Davis. I'm not going to shoot his kids. I'd like to. I guess if the opportunity put itself in front of me in the next 60 days, 50 days, whatever it is, I might do it. I do have the wherewithal to do that. But I don't think that's going to happen. If I had the money that I've lost, yeah, I'd be a very wealthy man. But that's the problem. Is it because I have a good nature? Or is it because I'm a coward that I don't chase these people? What is it? I'm not really sure. I bent over backwards to help this guy down there in Boulder make it. He had it for 7 years. How can you fail after 7 years? I'll tell you how you can fail. Drugs, alcohol, prostitutes, an oversized ego. I don't know. There's many different ways. That's why this guy failed. He stole some of my equipment. He owes people money down there. He left the place a filthy mess. that evil will be returned to him. If it already hasn't, the guy has had a pretty miserable life. But getting back to me, on the other hand, I have had a perfect life up until 1999, when I found out what the Thompsons had done to me in 92. And I am not going to take it. And I have to use the resources that I have, the wherewithal that I have, the ability that I have, the knowledge that I have to make this right. I am not walking away from it. Maybe I'm being a coward by doing what I'm doing, because without a doubt, I'm doing what you have done. I'm lying. I'm conspiring. I'm keeping things secret. And it's going to happen. And I believe that is a coward. You were cowards in the way that you dealt with me. The 10 years that I was in Granby. You people were cowards. That you could come to me and say, Marv, we want you out of this town. We hate you. We hate the FDIC. We hate how you benefited from the FDIC's actions and our misfortune and our stupidity. But none of you had the guts to do that. You had to take me on en masse. Well, I'm going to take you on by myself. It's the only way I know how to do it. I'll be dead when it's over, but that's my conviction. And for the people that are out there that hear this, that can stand listening to it, please pray for me. Pray for my soul. I believe that I'm doing the right thing. I don't think God would have let me get this far if it was the wrong thing. I don't think God would have given me the successful life that I had. I call it successful. I think I was a very poor person most of my life. But for who I was and what I was, I think I was a very rich man. And I'm thankful to God for giving me that life and giving me what I had. I mean, without a doubt, I made sacrifices. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have family. But God built me that way for a reason. And we're here today. And I'm going to carry that cross. I'm going to fulfill the reason He built me. All right, I'm going to stop again. Okay, I'm back. It's 10:27 on the 13th of April in the evening. I hope that the people of Granby learn that the way you punished me over the years that I was down there and how you punished me, for the most part, turned me into a desperate man. And desperate men do desperate things to recover a lot of times. And just for an example, I want to use nature as an example here. In nature, wolves and coyotes and, all the aggressive animals, they have their territory. They have their mates. And in nature, even an animal will fight to protect, some of them. Some of them are, what do they call them, deadbeat dads. But, a mother, just look at the mother. She will fight to protect her young. And she will protect her territory. And a male will definitely protect his territory. If he doesn't, he'll be overrun. If an animal will do this, why wouldn't a man? Now, did my buying that property make you desperate? It shouldn't have. My buying that property should have had no influence on you whatsoever. You should have realized it for what it was and moved on. But it did make you malicious and hateful. And you came after me. And I tried to protect my property, to protect the peace and quiet of that zoning, of the neighbors' zoning, of what they were doing. The guy over at the Broken Arrow, I know that guy was bribed. It's just too obvious. The new building he got from Cody while the process was going on, don't tell me there wasn't a deal there. Sure, Cody would have given that same building to someone else for the same price he paid for it. But a small price to pay for Cody to get his way. It was all bullshit. You know? Why did they get the easements and I didn't? It was because of malice and hate. Why was I so unsuccessful in protecting my property? Because you people needed to be taught a lesson. You all along were thinking that I was the person that needed to be taught a lesson. You were going to show me how it worked in Granby, Colorado. How the real world worked. People, you are so mistaken about the real world. I have walked away from what you've done to me, not on the same scale that you've done to me, on a lesser scale. I've walked away from it many times before. Laughed at you laughed at the people that were doing it to me because you know it's going to come back to haunt them, one way or another. This time, I'm not walking away from it. The real world is going to come back and slap you in the face like you have never been slapped before. And maybe that will make you think the next time, a generation from now, when you start screwing an outsider. All right, we had to flip tape over. When you start screwing somebody who's trying to do something good in that neighborhood, in that community, but it's against your wishes and your will, maybe what happens here this year of 2004, this summer of 2004, maybe you'll remember that. So there were, back in the early 1900s or late 1800s, there were 4 people died up here in Grand Lake over the where the county courthouse should be, whether it should be here in Grand Lake or Hot Sulphur Springs. I don't know how many years people remembered that incident, but they still talk about it today. What the purpose of all that, those people dying were, I really don't know. But it seems like this has to happen again and again and again in human nature. That we kill each other so that the next generation looks at things differently. Where they will open their mind and be open to other people's ideas. It's a cycle. best I can see it, God is saying that the cycle is time to happen again. Hopefully it lasts longer. Maybe it won't last as long. I don't know. You people didn't have to teach me anything. All the crap that you did to me has been done to me before on a much smaller scale. I know I shouldn't have given you the benefit of the doubt. I should have learned that people are ultimately corrupt. I didn't, I guess. I'm going to have to die with it. Because I'm telling you, I will not live with it. It's about 10:52 on the 13th of April in the evening. It's just another example of how forgetful I am and how sharp I'm not. I've been sitting here talking on this tape today, wishing that I had the documents in front of me all the time. It's been here in the computer. So I'm going to bring some of those up and go over some of the things. I've got a tape and a quarter left here, and then I'm going to be done with this.
Well, it's obvious I never got those documents out of the computer, and I have no idea what I was saying. I don't have time to spend listen to this crap anymore. I guess just my final point is that they, if the sanitation board in 1992 would have stayed out of my business, the Thompsons, whoever it was, Dick Thompson, Ron Thompson, Larry Thompson, Randy Schmuck, Bud Wilson, and I'm not sure who was all involved, but they stuck their dirty, stinking fingers in my business, and they did it with malice, and they shouldn't have. And malice begets malice. Had they stayed out of my business in '92, I would have gotten my rental units put up probably in '93 instead of '94, which was only a boathouse at the time, but could have easily been converted to rentals. They just ruined a good man's life, a lot of people's lives. But that's their style. That's what works for them. That's the only way they can stay on top. They can't play on a level playing field. They gotta try to keep people down, and that's okay. Hopefully they'll learn from their mistakes. Half of them are dead. Dick Thompson, Ron Thompson, the Dochef girl, the D&J's son north of me, and I don't know how many else were involved. They're probably dead too. They deserve it. They went too peaceful as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, this tape's probably got a lot of emotion in it, and anybody listening to it, you need to realize that and just take it from there. Anyway. Hey, I hope you all have a great time, a good life. I've had a great life. And it's Saturday morning, 22nd of May, 2004. And I'm going to put this tape recorder in a plastic bag, and somebody else can try to figure it out. We'll see you later.